Something is hidden in the very first gospel, something most readers never see. At first glance, the book of Matthew appears to be a simple biography of Jesus, a sacred story told from birth to resurrection. But beneath the familiar verses lies a blueprint, a divine architecture, a pattern woven through time, through prophecy, through the rise and fall of kings and kingdoms. And that pattern was not placed there by accident, it was encoded for those with eyes to see, for a generation prepared to behold the Messiah, not just as a savior, but as the culmination of everything heaven has been whispering since the beginning. Matthew does not begin with miracles or teachings. It begins with names, generation after generation, carefully recorded, precisely arranged. And in that list is a numerical code, 3 sets of 14, but 1 generation missing. A gap, a mystery. This is not a scribal error. It is a message. Because 14 is the number of David, king of Israel, and Matthew is declaring that the long-awaited king has come to complete the unfinished story of covenant and throne. But this is only the surface. The deeper you go, the more you realize that Matthew is not writing about Jesus alone. He is writing about time itself, how the life of one man mirrors the journey of a nation, how the footsteps of Christ retrace the wilderness of Israel, how his words resound like thunder from a new Mount Sinai, and how his presence carries the weight of the divine. It is written that Jesus is Emmanuel, God with us. But what does that truly mean? Could it be that every parable, every miracle, every moment in this gospel was not random, but placed with prophetic precision? That Matthew is revealing not just events, but a map, a design, a code that connects Moses to Messiah exile, to restoration, and heaven to earth. What if the life of Jesus was not just a life, but the life, the template, the fulfillment, the beginning and the end, all walking in human form? Stay close now, because as we open the scroll of Matthew, we are not just remembering history, we are stepping into prophecy. The missing generation, a prophetic puzzle. At first glance, Matthew's gospel opens not with wonder, but with names, a genealogy, a list so often skipped by modern eyes. But for ancient readers steeped in Hebrew tradition, these names were more than lineage, they were revelation. Matthew presents 3 sets of 14 generations, a structured rhythm, like a sacred cadence echoing through time. Yet if you count them, you'll find something strange. The last set only lists 13 names. 1 generation is missing. This is no oversight. It is prophecy in disguise. Matthew is drawing the reader into a divine enigma. The number 14 in Hebrew numerology corresponds to the name David DVD, whose letters carry the values 4 plus 6 plus 4. David is not merely a name in the list. He is the key to understanding the whole structure. By constructing 3 sets of 14, Matthew is signaling that this is the story of the royal lineage of kingship, of covenant promises made to David that his throne would be established forever. 2 Samuel 7:16. And yet the line seems incomplete. The throne still vacant, the generation missing. But what if the missing generation is not a mistake to be corrected, but a mystery to be revealed? What if the final name, unspoken and unseen, is meant to point directly to Jesus, not as a descendant alone, but as the fulfillment? He is not just in the line of kings. He is the king who completes the line. The absence becomes presence. The silence becomes voice. Jesus is the 14th. He is the completion of what David only began. He is the heir who was not born of human appointment, but of divine ordination, And in this structured omission, Matthew signals something profound, that Jesus steps into the gap, not only in history, but in humanity. Where lineage falters, grace enters. Where bloodlines break, heaven restores. This subtle structure hidden in plain sight invites us to ask, what else has been veiled beneath the surface of this gospel? What other blueprints might be waiting for us to discover, not in the words alone, but in the very shape of the story? Let us follow the path forward, not merely through history, but through a divine retelling of identity itself. Jesus as the new Israel, reliving the Exodus. The story that follows is not just of a man, it is of a nation being reborn in one life. In the opening chapters of Matthew, Jesus begins to walk a path not randomly chosen, but prophetically patterned after Israel itself. His journey does not merely echo their history, it redeems it. When Herod seeks the child's life, an angel warns Joseph in a dream, and the family flees to Egypt. This is not coincidental geography, it is deliberate. Just as Israel once entered Egypt in the days of Joseph, Jesus too enters the land of bondage. And just as God called his people out in the days of Moses, he now calls his son out of Egypt. I called my son, Hosea 11:1. A prophecy with two fulfillments, one national, one divine. The parallels only deepen. After leaving Egypt, Jesus is baptized in the Jordan. This moment is not merely symbolic, it mirrors the Red Sea, where Israel passed through water into covenant identity. But unlike Israel, who grumbled and turned back in their hearts, Jesus rises from the water with heaven's voice thundering approval. This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. And then the wilderness. 40 days, not unlike Israel's 40 years. A place of testing, hunger, temptation. But where Israel failed building idols, testing God, losing faith, Jesus remains faithful. Every reply to Satan is drawn from Deuteronomy, the book of covenant renewal. He lives the obedience Israel could not just on their behalf, but in their place. Then, ascending a mountain, Jesus opens his mouth and delivers a sermon, not of legalism, but of heart righteousness. The Sermon on the Mount becomes a new Sinai, not of thunder and fear, but of invitation to a kingdom not built on law alone, but on transformed desire. You have heard it said, but I say to you. He speaks as one not under the law, but as the lawgiver himself. This is not just storytelling. This is divine symmetry. Jesus is not only fulfilling prophecy, he is reliving a nation's journey, rewriting its history in his body. He becomes the faithful Israel, the obedient son, the one who walks the wilderness without falling, who hears the word and lives it, who crosses the waters and stands on holy ground. It is here that the reader begins to sense a deeper rhythm in Matthew's gospel. The past is not discarded, it is reawakened. The failures of humanity are not ignored, they are healed through the footsteps of one who walks the same path but does not stumble. But the journey is not over. For if Jesus is reliving Israel's story, then he must also give them what Moses never could, a new law, spoken not on stone tablets, but inscribed on hearts. And to do that, the structure of Matthew must unfold further through 5 divine discourses that echo the ancient Torah itself. 5 discourses, the new Torah. The Gospel of Matthew is not merely a record of events, it is a carefully constructed revelation. And at its heart lies a structure both ancient and divine. 5 great sermons, 5 moments where Jesus opens his mouth to speak not just to ears, but to souls. This is no accident. Just as the Torah, the first 5 books of Moses, form the foundation of Israel's covenant life, These 5 discourses form the spiritual foundation of the New Covenant people. Each teaching is a mountain of meaning, and each ends with the phrase, "When Jesus had finished these sayings," a rhythmic echo that ties them together like the rings of a sacred scroll. The first is the most well-known, yet the least understood, the Sermon on the Mount. Here Jesus speaks of righteousness not as external obedience, but as internal transformation. Blessed are the poor in spirit. He begins flipping human wisdom upside down. He does not abolish the law. He fulfills it by going deeper than it ever dared. Adultery begins in the eyes. Murder begins in the heart. Love your enemies. Turn the other cheek. Give without needing praise. It is not a call to try harder. It is an invitation to become new. The second discourse is the mission of the 12. Jesus sends his disciples like sheep among wolves, warning of persecution, betrayal, and the cost of following truth in a world that resists it. It is a call to spiritual warfare, not with swords, but with surrender. Not by overpowering, but by enduring. Do not be afraid, he says. The hairs of your head are all numbered. This is not strategy, it is trust. Then come the kingdom parables. Seeds and soils, wheat and weeds, hidden treasure pearl of great price, the net cast wide. These parables are not children's tales. They are divine riddles, separating those who merely listen from those who hear. Each story reveals the kingdom of heaven, not as a place far away, but as a force already growing, already working hidden in plain sight. The fourth discourse brings the teaching on community and forgiveness. Here Jesus speaks to how heaven's values are meant to govern life on earth, not through hierarchy, but through humility. Whoever humbles himself like this child is the greatest in the kingdom. He teaches how to handle conflict, how to forgive endlessly, and how heaven rejoices over one lost soul who returns. This is not just morality, it is divine culture. And then the fifth, the Olivet discourse, also called the end times teaching. Here Jesus speaks of signs, deception wars, and a love that grows cold. He warns, prepares, and tells stories that probe the heart. Are you ready? Are you watching? Will you be found faithful when the Master returns? Each of these 5 discourses is a peak on the journey, ascending, revealing, preparing. Together, they form a new Torah. But this time, the word is not chiseled into stone. It is spoken by the living voice of God himself, wrapped in flesh, looking into the eyes of his disciples. And the signs that follow, they are not random wonders. They are signals that a new creation is already being born, right in the shadow of the old. Miracles that reverse the curse. After Jesus finishes his first great sermon, Matthew presents a series of 10 miracles deliberately arranged, carefully chosen, and spiritually loaded. These are not scattered acts of compassion. They are signs. Each one is a reversal, a sacred undoing of the curse that has haunted humanity since Eden. Just as Moses once called down 10 plagues upon Egypt to break the power of oppression, Jesus now performs 10 miracles, not to bring judgment, but to bring healing. He does not destroy the world, he restores it. The first miracle sets the tone. He touches a leper. In ancient Israel, leprosy was not only a disease, it was a symbol of spiritual defilement and exclusion. No one touched a leper. But Jesus reaches out, breaks the boundary, and says, "I am willing. Be clean." With one word, he erases the separation. The untouchable becomes whole. Next, he heals a Roman centurion's servant, an outsider's plea, a foreigner's faith. Then Peter's mother-in-law. Then the stormy sea. One by one, creation bends toward order. A man possessed a paralytic, forgiven a bleeding woman, healed in secret, a dead girl raised in public. Each act reverses not just a condition, but a curse. Where there was chaos, now there is calm. Where there was death, now there is life. Where there was shame, now there is restoration. These are not just displays of power, they are previews of what the kingdom looks like when it touches earth. Even his healing of the blind and mute is rich with meaning. Isaiah prophesied that in the days of the Messiah, the eyes of the blind would be opened, the ears of the deaf unstopped, the lame would leap, and the mute would shout for joy. Isaiah 35. Jesus is not performing wonders for admiration. He is unveiling his identity. But the deeper mystery is this: every miracle he performs on bodies reflects the deeper healing he brings to the soul. The storm on the sea mirrors the storm within. The bleeding woman is not just sick, she is spiritually isolated, longing to be made whole. The paralytic is not just unable to walk, he needs to be forgiven. These miracles whisper that the old world is passing away. A new creation is breaking in, not through destruction, but through redemption. Jesus is not just a healer. He is a restorer of the pattern. The curse is being undone, one act of compassion at a time. And still the fullness of his identity remains veiled. For while the crowds marvel at his works, they still do not grasp the one who walks among them. But Jesus knows this and chooses to reveal himself slowly, deliberately, and with great mystery. To understand who he truly is, we must listen closely to the title he most often uses for himself, one that carries both humanity and divinity in a single phrase: the Son of Man, the hidden identity. More than 30 times in the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus refers to himself not as the Christ, not even as the Son of God, but as the Son of Man. To many it seems a humble phrase, a way to highlight his humanity, his solidarity with our weakness. But beneath the surface lies one of the most profound mysteries of his identity. The phrase Son of Man is not born from humility alone. It is rooted in Daniel 7, in a vision that shook the heavens. In Daniel's prophecy, the Son of Man is not a mere mortal. He is a divine figure coming with the clouds of heaven, brought before the Ancient of Days, and given authority, glory, and a kingdom that will never pass away. This is no ordinary man. This is the one who stands between heaven and earth, the rightful ruler of eternity. Jesus adopts this title not to lower himself, but to veil his majesty. He is both the humble servant and the exalted judge. He walks dusty roads, touches lepers, eats with sinners, yet at the same time, he is the one to whom all nations will bow. This title becomes a doorway, one that opens only for those with eyes to see. To the broken, the sick, the desperate, he reveals more and more, healing their wounds, forgiving their sins, welcoming their hearts. But to the proud, to those obsessed with signs and status, he remains hidden, silent, enigmatic. Who do you say that I am? He asks, not because he doesn't know, but because only those with spiritual hunger will answer rightly. This is divine restraint. Jesus does not unveil his full glory immediately, because to do so would overwhelm. Instead, he reveals it gradually, like dawn breaking over a dark horizon. Even when Peter finally declares, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God," Jesus affirms the revelation, then immediately speaks of suffering, rejection, death, and resurrection. The Son of Man must suffer first before he reigns. It is a paradox. The Son of Man has authority to forgive sins, and yet he will be handed over to sinners, The Son of Man will be lifted up, but not first on a throne on a cross. And in this mystery lies the key. Glory and humility are not opposites. In him they are married. To truly know Jesus is to see both, to see the veil and the fire behind it, the man and the mystery, the servant and the sovereign. And just when the disciples begin to grasp it, Jesus takes them up a mountain, not just to speak, but to reveal the Transfiguration, glory before the cross. It happens on a high mountain set, apart from the crowds, with only 3 witnesses, Peter, James, and John. They have walked with Jesus, heard his teachings, seen his miracles. But nothing prepares them for what comes next. In a sudden moment, Jesus is transfigured before them. His face shines like the sun. His clothes become white as light. The veil is lifted, and the glory hidden within him bursts forth. This is not a borrowed radiance. This is his own divine light breaking through the limits of flesh. And then Moses and Elijah appear, 2 towering figures from Israel's sacred history. Moses, the lawgiver; Elijah, the prophet of fire. They represent the law and the prophets, the very heart of the Hebrew Scriptures. And here they stand not as equals, but as witnesses. Their presence declares one truth. Everything they spoke, everything they foreshadowed, points to him. Then comes the voice, not from earth, but from heaven itself. "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Listen to him." These words echo the baptism, but now with greater weight. Not only is Jesus the chosen one, he is the one to whom even Moses and Elijah must yield. The law once carved in stone is now speaking with flesh and fire. Peter, overwhelmed, suggests building tents as if to capture the moment, to preserve the mystery. But he doesn't understand. The glory is not meant to be trapped on a mountaintop. It must descend. It must walk back down into the valley of pain, betrayal, and death. Because this moment is not the end, it is the preview. A glimpse of resurrection before crucifixion, a flash of eternity before the agony of Gethsemane. Jesus shows his glory now, so that when the cross comes, the disciples will remember. The light is not gone. It is simply hidden. And this is the pattern for all who follow him. We long for mountaintop clarity, for radiant visions and divine affirmation. But the path always leads downward. Glory precedes suffering, not to escape it, but to endure it with purpose. As they descend, Jesus tells them not to speak of what they've seen until the Son of Man is raised from the dead. The mystery deepens. For the next time he returns to a mountain, it will not be to shine, but to die. And still one final confrontation must unfold, where Jesus, as King, walks not into celebration, but into judgment. Not to be welcomed, but to turn the tables on everything corrupt and fruitless within the sacred heart of the nation. Judgment on the temple, a final warning. The moment Jesus enters Jerusalem, the city erupts. Crowds wave palm branches, shouting, "Hosanna to the Son of David." Their voices echo with messianic hope. Yet instead of heading to a palace to claim his throne, Jesus goes straight to the temple, the beating heart of Israel's worship. But what he finds there is not reverence, it is corruption. Merchants crowd the courts, their tables piled with coins, their voices haggling over the price of sacrifice. Pilgrims who have journeyed for days now face exploitation in the very place meant for prayer. What was supposed to be holy ground has become a marketplace of greed. Jesus does not hesitate. With fire in his eyes, he overturns the tables of the money changers, scatters their coins, and drives them out. It is written, "My house shall be called a house of prayer," but you have made it a den of robbers. His words strike like thunder, exposing not just an injustice, but a sickness at the core of the nation's soul. But this judgment is more than about commerce. On his way, Jesus curses a barren fig tree. Its branches spread wide, but bear no fruit. The tree withers under his word. This is no random act, it is a living parable. The fig tree represents Israel's spiritual leadership, full of leaves, outwardly impressive, yet fruitless before God. The temple itself stands tall, gilded in stone, but its worship is hollow. Its priests honor tradition while ignoring justice and mercy. Just as the fig tree crumbles, so too will this system collapse. And then Jesus does something shocking. In the temple courts, after the chaos, he welcomes the blind and the lame. He heals them on the very ground that had been corrupted. The leaders rage at the sight, but children cry out with joy. Hosanna to the Son of David. The contrast is unmistakable. The priests see a threat. The children see a king. Heaven's kingdom is breaking in, but not in the way anyone expected. Jesus warns that not one stone of this temple will remain upon another. Within a generation, his words come true. In 70 AD, the Romans burned the sanctuary to the ground. The warning has become history. And yet it was more than history. It was a spiritual shift. The age of temple sacrifice is over. The age of the living temple, the body of Christ, has begun. From now on, God will not dwell in buildings of stone, but in hearts made new. The clash is set. The leaders cannot tolerate a Messiah who overturns their power. They tighten their grip, plotting to silence him forever. But before the cross comes, Jesus sits upon the Mount of Olives, gazing over the city, and unveils secrets that stretch beyond Jerusalem, secrets of the last days and the hour of his return. The Olivet prophecy, secrets of the last days. As twilight falls over Jerusalem, Jesus departs from the temple for the last time. His disciples walk beside him in silence, still marveling at the grandeur of its stones and structure. But Jesus, with gravity in his voice, declares, "Truly I tell you, not one stone here will be left on another. Everyone will be thrown down." The words are chilling. The symbol of God's presence will be dismantled. The old order is passing away. Later, seated on the Mount of Olives, overlooking the city and the temple that gleams in the distance, the disciples come to him privately. "Tell us," they ask, "when will this happen? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" It is here that Jesus opens a window, not just into history, but into the future. Into two timelines, two fulfillments, one near, one ultimate. First, he speaks of the fall of Jerusalem, a warning that would come to pass within a generation. False messiahs, wars and rumors of war, nation rising against nation, famines, earthquakes, persecution, the desecration of the holy place. These signs would culminate in 70 AD, when Rome would lay siege to the holy city and leave the temple in ruins. Those who remembered his words would flee to the mountains and survive. It was prophecy with precision, judgment with mercy. But Jesus speaks beyond that moment into an age not yet fulfilled. He shifts the focus to his second coming, when the Son of Man will appear in the sky, and all the nations will mourn. He describes the days as like the time of Noah, ordinary life, continuing until the flood comes suddenly. There will be signs in the heavens, a darkening of sun and moon, a shaking of all that can be shaken. And amidst the chaos, the King will return not in secret, but in glory, with angels and trumpets and final separation. And yet his emphasis is not on dates or speculation. It is on the heart. For though the signs may be cosmic, the preparation is deeply personal. He tells parables not to satisfy curiosity, but to awaken conscience. 10 virgins await a bridegroom. 5 are ready lamps full of oil. 5 are not. The delay tests their watchfulness. A master entrusts his servants with talents. 2 invest with courage. 1 hides in fear. The judgment comes swiftly. A shepherd separates sheep from goats not by doctrine, but by compassion. Did they feed the hungry, clothe the naked, visit the imprisoned? The final test is not just what we believed, but how we loved. These stories reach across time, because the Olivet prophecy is not just about an ending. It's about a mirror, a reflection, a question that presses in on every soul. Are you awake? Are you faithful? Are you bearing fruit that lasts as the wind rustles the olive trees around them? Jesus leaves them with no timeline, no chart, only the burning call to remain ready. For the King is coming, and his return will not be delayed. But before that return, the deepest paradox of all must unfold: a coronation, cloaked in suffering, a crown made not of gold, but of thorns. The hour of betrayal draws near, and the throne is a cross. The cross, the hidden coronation. Night falls. The air thickens with dread. The cries of Hosanna have faded, replaced by whispers of betrayal and conspiracy. Jesus, the long-awaited Messiah, is handed over not to be crowned, but to be condemned. Yet every step of his suffering is not a detour, it is a divine design. What appears to be defeat is in truth the unveiling of the kingdom's hidden glory. He is betrayed by one of his own, sold for 30 pieces of silver, just as the prophet Zechariah foretold. He is brought before both Roman and Jewish authorities, questioned, mocked, and accused, yet offers no defense. Isaiah had written, "Like a lamb led to the slaughter, he opened not his mouth." This silence is not weakness. It is the roar of the Lamb who conquers without a sword. The soldiers weave together a crown not of gold, but of thorns. They place it on his head and drape a purple robe over his torn back. They kneel in mockery, "Hail, King of the Jews." What they mean as a joke, heaven proclaims as truth. The irony becomes prophecy. For here in blood and mockery, the true King is being enthroned not in the palace of Herod, but on the hill of Golgotha. As he is nailed to the cross, time itself seems to weep. The sky grows dark at midday. The earth shakes. The curtain in the temple, the veil that separated man from God, is torn from top to bottom. Access to the Holy of Holies is no longer restricted. His body becomes the new veil. Through his death, we are invited in. From the cross, he speaks words that shake the soul. "Father, forgive them." A cry not of judgment, but of mercy. It is finished. Not the cry of a victim, but the proclamation of a victor. The debt is paid. The curse is broken. The serpent is crushed. Even the sign above his head, nailed by Roman decree, Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews, was intended to mock. But in heaven's language, it is a banner over creation. The King reigns, but not in the way the world expected. His throne is a cross. His scepter is suffering. His victory is love poured out. And when he breathes his last, a centurion, hardened by war, numb to death, looks up and says what the religious leaders could not. Truly, this was the Son of God. The veil is lifted. Even the Gentiles begin to see. But this is not the end. The stone will not stay sealed. The grave will not hold him. For the coronation of the King is incomplete without the victory of life. And on the third day, the impossible breaks through. The resurrection, the kingdom breaks in. Before dawn, the world still mourns. The skies are silent. The stone is sealed. Rome believes the threat is contained. The disciples hide, in fear their hope entombed with the body of their teacher. But heaven is already moving, not with trumpet blasts or fiery signs, but with an earthquake and an empty tomb. The first witnesses are not soldiers or scholars, but women. Mary Magdalene, trembling with grief, comes to anoint the body. Instead, she finds angels. "Why do you seek the living among the dead?" they ask. And then he speaks her name, Mary, just one word, but it splits the veil of despair. The Lord is risen, and he appears not in celestial splendor, but in garden stillness. The new Adam walks in the garden of resurrection. What follows is a cascade of recreation. He appears to the disciples, breathes peace into their fear, and opens the scriptures that once seemed sealed. The promises are no longer mysterious, they are manifest. The Messiah had to suffer, die, and rise again. It was always written. Now it is fulfilled. But the resurrection is more than a miracle. It is a coronation complete. Death has been dethroned. The grave has lost its sting. The curse has begun to unravel. This is not merely proof that Jesus is who he claimed to be. It is the inauguration of a new world, a new creation, a new covenant. He does not rise for himself alone. He rises as the first fruits, the beginning of a harvest yet to come. He walks among his followers, eating, speaking, touching scars. His body bears the marks of suffering, yet radiates the glory of eternity. The kingdom has come not in theory, but in flesh and blood. To those who had scattered in fear, he now gives authority. To the doubters, he gives proof. To the broken, he offers restoration. And in this resurrection light, their lives will never be the same. They are no longer mere disciples. They are ambassadors of a kingdom that death could not conquer. But even now, the story does not close. The risen King has one final word, to speak one last command that echoes through time. A sending forth, a commissioning not only for the 12, but for every generation that would bear his name. A mission written into the heart of the gospel itself. The Great Commission, the beginning of forever. On a mountain in Galilee, the wind stirs once again, not as a whisper of death, but as a breath of destiny. The risen Jesus stands before the 11. Some worship, some hesitate, but all are about to receive a mandate that will echo to the ends of the earth. He speaks not with suggestion, but with authority. All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. This is not the voice of a teacher offering advice. This is the voice of the King of creation reclaiming what was always his. Heaven and earth are no longer divided. The veil is torn, the curse is crushed. Now the kingdom must spread not by sword, not by empire, but by witness. Go therefore, he says, and make disciples of all nations. Not just converts, disciples. Followers shaped not by emotion, but by obedience. People who walk in his way, carry his name, and embody his love. Baptize them. He continues not into a tradition or philosophy, but in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. A new family, a new identity, a rebirth into the mystery of divine fellowship. Teach them to obey all that I have commanded you. This is not legalism, it is liberation. The commands of Christ are not burdens, but keys to the kingdom. They reshape the heart, restore the image of God, and train us to live as citizens of heaven on earth. And then the promise that makes the mission possible. And behold, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. Not just in memory, not just in spirit, but in presence, in power. Emmanuel. God with us was not just how Matthew began, it is how he ends. The gospel is a circle that never closes. It opens forever outward. This commission is not a farewell. It is a beginning. The King is not retreating. He is enthroning his presence in his people. The scroll of Matthew does not end with resolution, but with activation. A call to carry what has been revealed into every corner of the earth until every nation, every heart, every hidden place hears the name that death could not silence. And so the Gospel of Matthew closes not with an ending, but with a door flung open into eternity. A kingdom that has come is coming and will come in fullness. There's something hauntingly beautiful about the way Matthew ends, not with a curtain call, but with a commission. Not with closure, but with continuation. The scroll doesn't fold itself shut. Instead, it extends like the hem of Christ's robe, touching those willing to follow. What began as a genealogy ends as an invitation. What started with a hidden king, born in obscurity, concludes with a risen Lord declaring his dominion over heaven and earth. And somewhere between those lines, something else quietly happens. You are called, because Matthew's gospel is not just the story of Jesus. It is the story of divine fulfillment pressing into human history and into your own life. Every pattern revealed, every prophecy fulfilled, every word spoken from that mountain or through that veil was written not just for them, but for you. To awaken the sleeping, to ignite the faithful, to prepare the chosen. So let me ask you, what if your life is part of the same sacred rhythm? What if your wilderness is not just wandering, but preparation? What if your silence is a womb for revelation? What if the Messiah is not just coming to the world, but coming to you? If this journey through the Gospel of Matthew has stirred something in your soul, if the veil feels thinner, if the story feels nearer, if the King feels closer, then stay with us. This is only the beginning. Like, share, and subscribe if you've been moved. And leave a word below that marks your place in this scroll. Your voice matters here. Until we meet again, may the words of the living gospel awaken your spirit, guide your path, and draw you ever closer to the one who is, who was, and who is to come. Peace be with you. See you in the next revelation.